Hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my prediction for the Strickland versus Plessis fight. If you are new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Strickland is 28-5 with 11 KOs and 4 submissions, and Plessis is 20-2 with 9 KOs and 10 submissions. This fight is for the UFC middleweight title. Strickland's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Adesanya, and Plessis' last fight was a win via KO in round 2 versus Whittaker. Plessis is a switch stance fighter, and just to say about what I've just been mentioning there, obviously this for the UFC middleweight title, Strickland's first defence, obviously it's not against Adesanya like people thought might be the case, it's straight after the fight between the two of them, but it's, in my opinion, probably now been built up to be a bit more of an entertaining fight, and you know, it's going to be adding a different element. Plessis finally kind of getting this chance now to see what he's like at the top level, and he's been, deserving of this shot, especially now coming off this dominating victory versus Whittaker, and from being a fighter who was kind of underestimated, Plessis, and not really seemed to be somebody who could get up there to the top, and to be able to go and win the fight versus Whittaker and to win the way that he did was very impressive. And now he's got this shot. I suppose in the kind of same aspect, it's similar to that of Strickland. Nobody really thought Strickland would beat Adesanya, but obviously he has, and he did in dominating fashion as well. And so they're both fighters who have been seen as underdogs in the past in their career, and now they're kind of crossing paths at the very top. And so it is quite nice to see, and that kind of builds a story. Obviously there's been other things going on outside of the cage with these two going back and forth. It's been an interesting affair. I don't know if they are mutually not friends, but got that kind of mutual respect there or not. I don't really know. Sometimes they do, sometimes it seems like they don't. But either way, it's going to make for an entertaining fight. And obviously, Plessis, like I say, he's a switch stance fighter. He's a very awkward fighter, and he's going to be difficult for any fighter to deal with, let alone Sean Strickland. Obviously, Easteron's also quite an awkward fighter as well, so I suppose it's going to be an interesting stylistic matchup. Also on this card, there is Pennington versus Bueno Silva, the kind of top two contenders in the women's bantamweight division, in which I think Pennington will win via a unanimous decision. I think Pennington, she obviously had that kind of rocky start to her career, but now she's on a very good run, and she's deserved and built her way back up to where she is now, which is something I've always liked with MMA, how you can just kind of build your way back up if you work hard enough and your record doesn't define you. And obviously she's here now and she's fighting Bueno Silva. This is most definitely the top kind of contenders fight for the belt, fighting Pena. I think she was going to fight Pena anyway at this point, but something happened and now we've got this fight, but it's still a good fight. And I think Pennington's probably being underestimated a little bit for this fight, even though she is the one higher ranked. But I think she's going to be able to win, and I think she's going to be able to control Pennington on the feet, and Bueno Silva on the feet, and be able to get a victory that way. Just got to really watch out for Bueno Silva's power, but I think Pennington's movement might be able to do that and then get a unanimous decision and grind out a unanimous decision that way. Going back to the main event, Strickland as a fighter, he's controlled, he's composed most of the time, he looks relatively comfortable, and he most definitely did look comfortable against Adesanya. He's good at maintaining distance. Obviously he's got that Philly shell, which everybody loves to talk about with him. It's kind of a minimalistic defense that he has, and that Philly shell is something which plays into that, and it's impressive when you can use it well, and he most definitely has used it well, and has used it well against Adesanya. And maybe in the past it has kind of shown weakness in certain fights like that of the Pereira fight, but against Adesanya, that minimalistic defense was just something which meant that he couldn't really get hit, and it kind of worked perfectly. And I suppose with mixing in with how comfortable he was in that fight and how composed he was in that fight, it really did just kind of blend together nicely for a really nice defense. And like I say, for him to hardly get hit, he has that solid fundamentals which every fighter needs, but he's got them at the highest level. He walks you down. He's been through adversity inside the cage and outside the cage, so he knows how it is, and he knows how to kind of give a gutsy performance and give it all. And I'm sure in a fight like this, when it is his first defense against somebody who, like I say, has been going back and forth with a bit, and I'm sure he's going to want to prove and to give everything in this fight. He's a pressure fighter, he's efficient in his work, he only kind of does what he has to do to be able to win and he doesn't waste anything or waste any energy, which is nice to see, and it's important to see as well. He is dominant in his striking, and he was, like I've mentioned, against Adesanya. He's accurate, he's well disciplined. He doesn't obviously try to go for the stoppage against Adesanya, but you could see that perhaps that wasn't going to happen. And then he went back to what he was doing, and he managed to get the victory by grinding out that way when certain fighters possibly would have tried to force it even more and just become ill-disciplined in that aspect. He has good shot selection, good timing, very good timing in the shots which he caught and hurt Adesanya with, and he does control the centre. Moving on to possibly negatives about him, I mean, he does stand straight up, he walks onto shots, he isn't overly fast, and he does have his chin in the air, so there's definitely defensive things which are always going to be there with Strickland. It's just if you can find it and you can hit it, and with du Plessis' power, is that going to be a big factor or not? He can overreach, and he did overreach against Pereira, and that's when he got caught, and that's when he got hurt. But I suppose that's ill-discipline a little bit, and so there's little times that can creep in. But the game plan against Adesanya was that of a perfect game plan, really, where there was no ill-discipline that crept in. He can struggle a bit with balance. On the ground, he's not amazing. I mean, he has an alright scramble, but other than that, it's if you can get him on the ground, you can definitely cause damage on the ground, and he's not amazing at getting back to his feet. He doesn't really try and go for many takedowns himself, and he doesn't gain too many. He can, but he doesn't overly do it too much. He drops his guard later on at times, and I don't know if he's really down to tiredness or if he can just possibly become a bit more lazy defensively. But he can drop his guard. Sometimes that kind of links to him possibly becoming a bit too comfortable at times. In close, I think sometimes he doesn't always do his best work. He can also, if he is going to look uncomfortable, it can be on the back foot, and that's when his balance can go into play, where it does look a little bit shaky on the back foot. He doesn't have the highest of output at times, and so sometimes he can get outworked, and he does cross his feet often, so he is there to get hit quite a lot of times if you can catch him when he is crossing his feet and he isn't just kind of promoting that Philly shell. Speaking about du Plessis as a fighter, he's physically strong, very physically strong, and probably one of the strongest fighters in the division. He's got an interesting build, to be fair, from the way I feel like his legs don't look massive, but his upper body just looks massive. And so, he's definitely physically strong, and he can throw you about, and he did that against Whittaker. He's got very awkward style. It's going to be very difficult to counteract that and time that. He's got high guard. He is good at countering takedowns and kind of making that onto the positive for him. Did that very well versus Whittaker. In close, he is very good. He can also gain takedowns well by the fact of how physically strong he is and how much he can bully you. He capitalizes also when he is on top and when he does get a takedown. He is good at passing guard when he's on top as well. And so, like I say, capitalizing on top. Very good ground and pound as well on top. He is very good at finishing fights. I mean, 19 stoppages and 20 wins. It's very good at finishing fights. He's got a good, strong jab. Like I say, very powerful in his punches. He doesn't really have to seem to land too clean of a shot to still be powerful. He has good attacking variation. He's got good straight shots. And like I say, they're awkward straight shots, and they don't always look the most technical, but they seem to work, and they seem to be able to push through any kind of guard. And he does outwork you and does have that kind of workhorse stamina mentality as well. Negatives about him, he does lunge in a bit at times, and it means that he can possibly get caught because he's not overly the fastest either. He can be a bit too bouncy in his awkward style and a bit too jittery in his awkward style. It's solid feints, but sometimes it can be a little bit too much in my opinion. His balance isn't amazing either, and he can have his chin in the air as well. Sometimes he's wanting to just stand and trade, and if that is the case, I think somebody like Strickland could possibly find success in that aspect. He can struggle to find range a little bit at times and kind of work with your range when he is at a mid-range. He can walk onto shots. He doesn't have loads of defensive movement. I think probably Strickland does have the better defense out of the two. He's not overly fast, and like I said, neither is Strickland. He's a bit of a slow starter at times early on as well. His technicality isn't amazing, and sometimes his timing isn't amazing either. It's not bad, but it's not sometimes amazing, or in my opinion, as good as Strickland either. And so, there's weaknesses for both fighters, but I think overall it's going to make for an interesting fight. I could possibly see it being a stand-up fight. I don't know if du Plessis is going to want to take it to the ground, where possibly you would have to favour him. Strickland is the favourite for this fight, and I think that du Plessis will win via submission in round 2. I think he will probably end up inevitably taking him to the ground if things aren't working on the feet for him. And then at that aspect, I think he will find success. I think he will be able to pass guard, and he will be able to get a stoppage. And it will be early on with his physical strength, and most probably catch Strickland off guard on the ground as well. And yeah, then he becomes the champion, and does that kind of whole kind of underdog story for him to then become champion, just like kind of Strickland had that underdog story to then become champion. And who he could go on to fight then? I mean, Adesanya is probably the clear option. If Adesanya isn't wanting the fight, or if he's wanting to possibly move up in weight again and fight another time in the light heavyweight division, I don't know. But Cannonier is possibly the only other option in the middleweight division. But I mean, I'd imagine the Adesanya one will be next. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't need, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.